All right, I will say hello and welcome back to another episode of The Balance Breakdown. And today we are joined, as always, by the king himself, Mr. Jack Sear. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Absolutely delighted that we've finally been able to push Sean out and we found a worthy replacement.
Look, you take the words right out of my mouth. Secretly, when we started this podcast, I always wanted to not include Sean, but he just sort of forced his way in as he does. But today we are joined by an actual MMA mind, and that is Severe MMA's greatest analyst and writer, Mr. Ian O'Neill. Ian, how you going?
All right, Harry. I'm doing good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to breaking down some fights, and I'm sure Shawnee would have something to say about that analogy of my content and writing.
Look, I mean, we're happy for you to just have pushed Sean out for this episode. So, I mean, the Sean Sheehan of Severe MMA obviously is a great man. Love to have him on. Sean McGuinness is a dick. So, we'll start with just some news, right? First of all, I just want to talk about McGregor Poirier, right? You know, we haven't had a chance to really talk about that. So I just wanted to kind of get people's opinions. Ian, can I start with you? What was your opinion of the whole thing, really? The build-up and the fight and the post-fight?
The build-up to me was unique, I guess, for Conor McGregor. He approached it in a manner that he wouldn't normally approach fights, and I guess we got to see a glimpse of that too with Cowboy Cerrone as well. He seemed in the best shape of his life to me. Looked in phenomenal shape. His mindset looked good. Confidence was high. I was pretty confident that he would get the job done before the fight. I guess hindsight is a great thing, and I probably didn't give Dustin Poirier as much of respect as he deserved. But you know, Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor. He says things and he does things, and that's the way he always did. And it didn't work out for him too well. I thought that Dustin Poirier fought a hell of a fight, like phenomenal fight, excellent game plan. His mentality was questioned before the fight, and I don't think anybody can question his mentality right now, because I don't know whether he was playing us all for fools, but he did look nervous. He did look on the edge of his seat and uncomfortable throughout the build-up. But once he got in there and started to implement that game plan, got the early takedown, and then went on with those leg kicks, but also had some great boxing exchanges as well. It was just, it was the perfect game plan to fight someone like Conor McGregor. You know, you get the takedown early, you get him thinking about that takedown, and with the way McGregor approached the fight did kind of help a little bit with that solid boxing stance and leaving that leg open to be kicked. I was very, very, very surprised to see that. And you know, they're leaning heavy on the leg kicks, which were a major factor of the fight. But you know, some questions will have to be asked about the preparations, and do you think that he has good training partners? Does he need to bring new training partners in to push him to his absolute limits? And I guess we have to respect the fact that he did, before that fight, only spend 40 seconds in the cage in 3 years. And that also plays a major factor. And it probably did a little bit in his performance. But it wasn't all bad for McGregor. He did show some good flashes and landed some good shots. And Poirier himself, he even said that he was a little bit wobbled in the first round as well. But, you know, I don't know whether it was overconfidence from McGregor or just a lack of respect towards Poirier. But Dustin Poirier was full value for that win. He fought an incredible fight, and I'm really excited to see what happens in the third fight when it goes down. I don't think there's any doubt about it that it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I agree. And before I give my thoughts, Jack, have you got anything to add onto that?
So I thought Ian kind of summarised my thoughts perfectly as well. It was probably the weirdest build up to a Conor McGregor fight I can recall since his kind of the start of his UFC tenure. He was obviously still confident, but he wasn't kind of radiating with his usual kind of confidence and swagger. I didn't feel like it reached previous levels that we'd seen before, and I don't know if that's because all of the stuff happening outside of the cage. I don't know whether or not he wants to be maybe a better role model for his kids, and he's trying to take kind of a more mature approach. Maybe it's because he really respected Dustin Poirier's skill set, having been in with him before, and this is kind of a new approach he's going to have. But it was definitely strange coming in. Even things down to the press conferences and the walkout, he just didn't seem like the same person. And obviously, a lot has changed over the years. And in terms of Dustin Poirier, came in with a great game plan, executed perfectly. And yeah, I think only positive things can be said about Dustin as well. But where Conor goes from here, I think is the big question.
I agree. I think the most impressive thing that I found about Dustin was, I think in the build-up, he was genuinely nervous, right? I do think he was genuinely nervous. I think it wasn't a game. It wasn't a mask. You know, Kavanagh said something really poignant, and he said, look, when you've been knocked out by a man once, you know it's possible, right? And this is, as with always, a Conor McGregor fight is the biggest fight of your career, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a media standpoint, from a fan standpoint. If you beat Conor McGregor and you win decisively, it will skyrocket your stock in a way that no other fighter will be able to do that. And that carries a lot of pressure. You know, we know that Dustin Poirier is a charity man. He's a family man. He's a man that fights for more than just himself, although, you know, he echoes all these statements about wanting to be a champion, and I'm sure that's true. But it's also, this is a man you have been finished by, and finished well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't controversial. There was nothing controversial about it. You know, he got clipped and he dropped and he was finished, and
it was clean. It was
clean. It was clinical. Yeah. It was beautiful. Right. So Conor coming back in here, he's saying all the right things. And I think, frankly, I believe that Conor did respect Dustin as a man, right? I don't think the charitable donation would have happened otherwise. And when Poirier and McGregor started fighting, in the first 30 seconds, Conor clipped him with a left hand. And you saw Dustin take a step back, shake his head, and blow a big gust of air. And he was like, okay, I can take these. Like, I just took one, I can take it. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh no, we're in for a fight now, right? And I think you're right. The takedown was really smart by Poirier. I thought Conor did brilliantly well to anti-wrestle, get himself back, keep his hips away, and then get back up. And then the shoulder strikes in the clinch again, et cetera, et cetera. Those were really cool. It was really nice to see. And I think it was important to see that too, because there's all this stuff about McGregor as a poor grappler and grappling is his weak sense, blah, 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 blah. Clearly not, right? Clearly not. Yeah. But overall, I was really impressed. I was both impressed with Poirier and disappointed with McGregor. I think when you take the first leg kick, you have to check it and you have to do something about it, right? Now, I know the first couple of leg kicks that he threw, Conor did that tie step away and step back in and out of range. That's fine. But when the first one lands, McGregor himself said in a post-fight interview that it was the first one that did the most damage. So why are you taking more? Do you know what I mean? Like, for a man with the fight IQ of Conor McGregor, I cannot fathom why he allowed himself to take more damage, you know? Maybe he just thought, if I keep cracking him, he'll go down. And that was the trade-off. But Jack, what do you think?
So yeah, I was gonna jump in there because it's something interesting, right? So if we think back to Conor versus Max Holloway, that is as good of an example as I can think of where someone adapted mid-fight, right? He was presented with an injury, had to switch up the game plan, went to the wrestling, and it was still really clean technical performance, right? Then we look at things like the first Nate Diaz fight, where he's starting to fatigue, and he knows that probably he's not going to be able to put Nate out there with one punch. But there was no kind of shift in his approach and whatnot, and I feel like that was pretty much the same here. It felt like he didn't have a plan B to go to. I feel like out of all the different versions of Conor we've seen, this was kind of the most stripped back version. There was minimal kicking. It was purely a predominantly boxing approach. And yeah, ultimately that's why he came unstuck. I think one other point to add as well, which I didn't consider enough pre-fight, was the fact that this was happening at 155 and not 145. I think not only does that make a difference in terms of Poirier's durability, but Conor's power is not the same as it is at 45. He is absolutely still a sniper. But even if you go back to the Eddie Alvarez performance and whatnot, Eddie was able to. It was multi-shot combinations that was putting Eddie down. It wasn't just the long sniping left hand. So I think that was something that I probably should have kind of highlighted beforehand and put more thought into.
I mean,
I was a little bit disappointed in myself too for not maybe recognizing that those were going to be an option for Dustin Poirier. And like Jack was talking about there, McGregor not changing it up mid-fight, and it's like that's what you need to be doing in those situations. And the questions have to be asked is why they didn't do that. Excuse me, why they didn't do that. So like those are the questions I'm wondering, is that like you should be preparing yourself for all scenarios in a fight. Like that's how you get fully prepared. For me, when we were talking back on Max Holloway fights and other previous fights as well, and I look at it as what sacrifices is he making? Because the fight game is all about sacrifice. You know, you move yourself away from your family, you move yourself away from your loved ones, you put yourself in the grind of the gym and into a training camp and everything like that. And like we've seen McGregor in the past make those sacrifices when he's moved his training camp over to Iceland, or he's been in with all the high level SBG guys in preparation for his first rise up into the UFC. And it's like, that sacrifice still there? Is that real hunger to get the job done real? Like, is it still there for him? Like, we don't know those answers to those questions. We'll find that out in his next fight, that's for sure. But he's getting but I'm looking at McGregor in his training camp in Portugal, nice setting and everything is all rosy dozy for him, and then he's turning up to the fight in a yacht and stuff like that. Is like, I'm not really seeing too much sacrifice anymore, and like to really get the best out of yourself in the fight game, you've got to fucking make those sacrifices, I think.
Right, so in one line, who's next for Dustin Poirier and who's next for Conor McGregor? Ian?
Who should be next, or who do I think is going to be?
Who should be next?
I would like to see Conor McGregor versus Tony Ferguson next. And I would like to see Dustin Poirier fight Charles Oliveira next for the title. I don't know how you can make a title fight with Conor McGregor in it next after losing these last two fights.
Because he's Conor McGregor.
He's Conor McGregor, but and it could very well happen, but I think that you put Dustin in there with Charles, you put Conor in there with Tony, get him back more octagon time. That's what I want to see. Is that going to happen? Probably not.
Jack?
They're either going to put Dustin in with Charles, or they're going to put Dustin in there with McGregor and just do a title shot next. And to me, that doesn't really make too much sense, but it's the UFC and they'll do what they want.
I agree. Jack?
Yeah, I think we're probably going to get a trilogy for Conor, whether it be Poirier or Diaz. I actually tend to lean with the latter, just because I think the UFC, if Conor loses again, right, I think it will start to be, the casual fans will start to wake up a little bit and realise perhaps he's no longer the top dog. So I think they'll serve him up, Nate Diaz, nicely, get some excitement ready for the Poirier trilogy. In the meantime, I could see Poirier sitting tight and waiting to see how the rest of the lightweight mess unravels with Chandler, with Gaethje, with Charles Oliveira as well. If I had to pick a fight for Poirier out of those three, I think the Chandler one is the most exciting. So that would be my preference. So
I think I'm actually taking one of each of your fights. So I think what should happen and what will happen is Conor Diaz 3. The reason why I don't want to see Tony Ferguson is because I really just don't want to see Tony Ferguson fighting anyone in the top 5 anytime soon. Like both Conor and Tony need a rebuild fight, but it can't be against each other. You know, Tony took so much damage in the Gaethje fight and then looked like me versus Jack in the Charlie Olives fight, right? It wasn't close. And you know, I would like to see Tony fight somebody in the top 15, of course, in the top 10, of course, but somebody that is an easier skills-based matchup than somebody like Conor, because I think Conor is a really bad styles matchup for somebody like Tony, especially.
I think they'll do, sorry to jump in, I could see Tony and Dan Hooker getting made.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I think that's
both Ferguson and Diaz have been talking on Twitter about fighting each other at 172, so that has to be mentioned as well. You know,
I mean, I'll see that.
I'd watch the hell out of that. Yeah, I'd watch that for sure.
On board.
Can we start on the ground though?
Yeah.
And then I think the Dustin fights Charlie Olives for the title. I think that's the fight. I don't like. I think Charlie Olives has earned his place in a title fight, right? And I get it. Michael Chandler comes in and, in the words of Jack Steer, gives Dan Hooker a certified whacking. But I mean, look, it's one fight. Let's pull the reins a little bit and let's give him a Justin Gaethje. Let's give him a, name the fighter and let's see what happens. And if he does it again, all right, cool. Let Sean get on the hype train and we can go all the way, but for now, let's relax. So we'll move on to the last piece of news, and that's that Jai Herbert has had a fight announced, European Jai Herbert, and that is against Drakkar Klose. Jack, do you want to give your thoughts quickly?
I like this fight, especially for Jai as well. I think he's got a significant advantage in boxing. It's rough matchmaking considering he debuted against Trinaldo, which is already like a kind of upper mid-pack lightweight, very experienced, and now he's going against kind of a similarly positioned lightweight in terms of rankings as well. I know Jai isn't as young as some of the other prospects out there, so perhaps that's why he's getting this push. But yeah, I think it's a very winnable fight for him, and I think he poses a lot of problems for Drakkar.
I agree. Ian, any thoughts to round us off?
Yeah, I agree with Jack. I think it's another tough matchup for Jai. And that seems to be the trend in the UFC right now. There seems to be no gimme fights in there anymore. We had Rhys McKee, who just went in and he fought Hazmat Chimaev, and then he went again and against Morono, and two very tough matchups for your opening fights into the UFC. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for Rhys. And he ended up getting cut, but I feel he'll be back again. But back to Jai Herbert. I think that this is a winnable fight for him for sure, as the Trinaldo one was. But when you're fighting guys that have a bunch of UFC experience, that can play a big part. But and Drakkar Klose he's a good stylistic matchup for him as well. I'd imagine it's going to be a stand-up battle. But yeah, it's going to be a really close fight, and I'm excited to see how Jai bounces back from that first defeat, because he has potential to make a big wave in that lightweight division.
I agree. So we'll move on to the reason why we're actually here, and that's UFC 258, Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. Overall, a decent card, right? Some decent fights, but it's very, very top heavy, right? Like outside of that top fight, unless you're even that top fight, frankly, if you're not a hardcore fan, I don't think there's too much that's going to be calling your name. But anyway, we'll break them down. So the main event, 170-pound title, Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. Obviously, this has been booked a few times and for various reasons has fallen out. Kamaru is obviously coming off that just a one-sided destruction of Jorge Masvidal, who jumped in on, essentially 3 days notice or whatever it was. And then before that, the Colby Covington war. Jack, do you want to slightly break us down and what your thoughts initially on this fight?
Yes, I would love to. So I think the big storyline here is obviously the fact that these guys were teammates. Burns has mentioned that they've done hundreds of rounds together, which creates a really unique dynamic, right? Because no matter what improvements both of them have made since they last trained together, they're still going to have a fairly strong gauge on where each other's strengths lie. I think one thing that's been interesting is kind of looking into it. Like Gilbert Burns is always a guy that emits confidence, right? He's very much confident in his skills. He knows where he wants to get to. But I feel like he's quietly more confident about this fight than I think a lot of people would be against Usman. And perhaps that ties into some of their past sparring sessions. But I think I think they're very, very well matched. Another point that kind of stands out to me is the fact that Usman's gone to train with Trevor Whitman. Now, this gives a clear indication for me as to what his game plan is going to be. You only go to Trevor Whitman if you want to tie up your boxing and improve in that realm, right? So For me, maybe that does indicate towards Burns perhaps getting a better of the some of the grappling exchanges when they were training both under Henry Hooft. Interestingly, Usman's sole loss many moons ago was also by submission as well, and we saw a couple of times in his UFC tenure he's had a couple small scares on the ground. The one that's standing out to me was actually on Tough versus Michael Graves, where Michael Graves was able to take his back and was threatening for a little bit. Burns has really found a home for himself at 170, and I think that weight cut was definitely doing him a lot of disservice. Right, we saw against the Dan Hooker fight, he wasn't eating shots particularly well. He had a very bad rep for his gas tank falling off in the final rounds, and look at him at welterweight. He was taking late notice fights against Alexei Kunchenko and Gunnar Nelson, and went 3 hard rounds. So I think it's definitely been a really positive move from Gilbert. For me, I think this is likely going to be a fight that's contested on the feet. Burns has some of the best wrestling I can think of for a jiu-jitsu guy kind of transitioning into MMA. He was always a pretty good wrestler when he was killing the no-gi circuit many moons ago. And I think part of that's due to his athleticism as well. But I think it's going to come down to the striking on the feet. At the moment, I'm kind of leaning towards Gilbert. But before I make my pick and give any more, Ian, do you want to jump in and share some of your thoughts as well?
Yeah, Jack, I actually agree with you 100%. And I feel that the fight is going to mainly play out on the feet here. We've got 2 really, really good grapplers, and that will probably end up just, if they were to just grapple, it would probably be a stalemate. I can't see anybody getting the advantage there. So I would imagine that definitely with Usman's move over to Trevor Whitman is that he is trying to make this a stand-up battle. He's trying to make it into probably a similar enough fight to what he fought against Colby Covington. Usman is the type of fighter who he likes to impose his will onto his opponents, and he'll stand firm in front of them, and he'll try to land those big, heavy shots. He'll implement some forward pressure, try to get his opponents up against the cage, where he likes to clinch and wear upon his opponents as well. I'm not too sure that's the game plan to go in with against someone like Gilbert Burns here. So I would imagine he's going to try and pick him apart on the feet. Usman as a fighter, I believe, is pretty underrated in the UFC. He's been constantly improving over the last couple of years, in my opinion. And before he picked up the title, since he picked up the title, he's been looking like he's never really been in too much trouble in his past 4 or 5 fights. He's been ever improving. One thing that I really took notice after the Masvidal fight was, even though he got that decision at short notice against Masvidal, he wasn't too happy with his performance. He said he needed a lot more work, and that may have sparked the move over to Whitman. For Gilbert Burns coming into this fight, I feel what he needs to do is, I think he needs to kind of fight a dirty fight, like a gritty fight, get in right in Usman's face with some clinch work and dirty boxing. He can't give Usman the time to impose himself the way he does with all of his previous opponents, where he'll just like stand and he's happy to take a couple of shots to land his big heavy hooks, and he does throw heavy shots. So I'm kind of excited to see what he brings into this fight after his work with Whitman, because we've seen what Whitman did with Justin Gaethje in that performance against Tony Ferguson. He looked really good, patient, throwing his shots. And I found when Usman fought Masvidal that he was a little bit over aggressive and a little bit sloppy in the early stages of the fight, and he ended up getting himself caught. You don't want to be doing that against someone like Burns, who does have that one punch knockout power, or has the ability to hurt his opponents with one punch as well. So like, it's a tough one to call. I'm leaning towards Usman. I feel that, Gilbert Burns is a top quality contender. He absolutely deserves to be in there, but I'm not too sure if we've seen the full potential of Kamaru Usman yet. And I think that this fight could be a real chance for Usman to make a real good statement. And I'm wondering if he's looking to get some more finishes onto his record. Doesn't have all that many, and that would be the only criticism as such that I would have about his fight so far. I think if he fights a similar fight to what he fought against Colby Covington, I think he gets the job done here. And I think he has the ability to get it done in the later rounds as well. I think he might get Gilbert Burns out of there.
So I disagree entirely. So I think, okay, so the fight that we've recently seen of Kamaru Usman versus another top grappler is Colby Covington, right? They were so well matched in that they both had insane cardio. They're obviously both great grapplers. What was the difference? The difference was power, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason why Kamaru won that fight was largely because he just damaged Colby more. And eventually the nose and the jaw was so beaten that even Colby with his iron will wasn't able to take the shots anymore, right? Fine. No problems with that. Gilbert, as you already alluded to, is somebody that's happy to take a shot, to land a big hook. We saw Kamaru fight in, a sloppy fashion against Jorge, and he got himself caught against the Jorge that killed himself to make the weight on 6 days' notice or whatever it was. Now, don't get me wrong. Kamaru going to Trevor Whitman is obviously going to improve. But the point about Justin Gaethje is that has been improvements over years and years and years of being together, right? That wasn't just a flick of the switch. Here's 3 months. Now we've turned you into this patient puncher. Instead, it was Justin Gaethje got his eyes fixed, one, so he could actually see where he was throwing shots. And two, he said to Trevor Whitman, I want to be a champion. And Whitman's like, okay, stop being a dickhead and just winging punches. And that's what we saw, right? I don't know whether there's enough time to have made the improvements for Kamaru not to get clipped. And what you've got here is he's gone to Whitman because he wants to clean up his boxing. Absolutely sensible. You don't want to be on the ground with somebody like Gilbert Burns, who's going to create scrambles, who's going to make it difficult for you, who's going to be really hard to pin down. And in scrambles, he's going to be trying submissions. He's going to be doing this, that, the next thing, right? But what he will do is he will crack you with those hooks, right?
Yeah.
The big question for me here is, can Kamaru wear Gilbert down enough that he can start to land damage without taking too much damage back? Or is Kamaru going to get too happy in those exchanges and get rocked by Gilbert? Because we've never seen Kamaru hurt and rocked. Never. We've never seen him on really wobbly legs. We've not seen him back against the cage trying to survive. We've never seen him on the floor hurt. Ever.
You have to give him credit for that too.
100%.
I've not seen him in trouble, and I don't think he's going to be too worried about the grappling of Gilbert Burns because he's been in there with guys like Damian Maia and Dos Anjos and Colby Covington, I guess. So I feel that he does, to be the devil's advocate here or to counter argue, I feel he kind of does. I think he's going to be a little bit more stronger than Gilbert Burns, and definitely. I think if they do have some grappling exchanges, I feel that Gilbert Burns may feel that, and I don't know what's that going to do to his confidence. And if it's about, like I said, it's about if Usman has the ability to implement what he wants to do and forward pressure and get Gilbert Burns moving backwards and maybe apply some pressure in the clinch, but you don't want to hang around there too long. That's why I feel that Burns may. Burns in his last fight fought Tyson Woodley, and he dropped Tyson Woodley almost instantly. And as a result, Woodley was kind of hesitant for the remainder of the fight. And even towards the end of that fight, Burns looked like he wasn't gassed, but he did look like he was slowing down. And I can tell you something for sure is that Usman is not going to lay off the gas here. He's going to come 100 miles an hour at him.
And this is exactly my point. No, not at all. Jump in. This is exactly my point. My point is it's cardio versus power, in my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. Because to my point, and that's, being utterly disrespectful to both fighters. But like, what I mean is, to your point, you'll say, Usman will feel the strength. If they've sparred hundreds of rounds together, both of them are well aware of how strong the other is and how that grappling is going to go. My thought with Colby Covington is the reason why you don't want to grapple is just in case. What's the point in wasting energy, right? What's the point?
Yeah.
Because to get Colby Covington down is hard enough as it is. So when you eventually get him down, are you going to be able to keep him there? Is he going to scramble? What's going to happen? What's the point? Just stand on the feet and knock him out, right? Which is what we saw. I think this is a question of, can Burns last long enough to do some damage to Usman? If he can't, it's done. It's finished. It's done.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, do you want to just round us out before we move to picks?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. I think we should be more specific around how we kind of frame the grappling part, right? Because I think that Usman will absolutely steer clear of shooting takedowns and wanting
100%.
I do too. I think he's going to steer clear from that altogether.
Yeah,
it would be jump the Gilly City.
Yeah, he will absolutely want to pressure Gilbert up against the cage, head under Gilbert's chin, throw elbows over the top and look to work the body. He does that better than anyone else. And I think playing that attritional route with Gilbert probably would pay dividends. A couple of X factors, if we're looking at this as most likely unraveling into a striking contest, right? A couple of X factors is that Usman's going to be carrying in, I think, a 6 or 7 inch reach advantage, which could absolutely play a factor. And another factor is also Gilbert's low kicks. So
that's what I was going to say.
This isn't just important because Usman doesn't throw low kicks, right? And it gives Gilbert another weapon to throw. And obviously he's not necessarily going to be worrying as much about Usman countering those low kicks with takedowns. But it's quite well documented that Usman's got pretty bad knees. He can't run in camp, has to find other ways to do his cardio. So who knows in a 5-round battle if Burns starts booting in Usman's legs, what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Burns will need to do to counteract when the minute that Usman wants to set up for those big hooks or those powerful punches, you have to be countering with those leg kicks and trying to steer him away from wanting to do that. But it's going to be super interesting to see how it all unfolds. Like it's going to be a great fight.
Ian, give me a pick.
I think Usman by decision, maybe late stoppage. Do I have to give a certain? I'll go Usman round 5 stoppage.
Oof, he's going for getting him out there. Jack?
I've been bouncing back and forth on this one all week, but I'm going to stick with my. I've got a soft spot for Gilbert Burns, so I'm going to pick Gilbert Burns to strip Usman of the title with an upset submission. I think he'll rock him on the feet, follow him to the ground, and secure a neck or arm.
Round.
That's the hardest thing. Give me the second. Give me the second round.
Jesus. All right.
Ooh.
So I am going Gilbert Burns by submission as well. But I'm going round 3. The reason why I think that is I think that what we're going to see is Usman's going to come in and he's going to try and set the pace. If Gilbert Burns implements a leg kick heavy game, right? Bearing in mind, legs are longer than arms, right? So when Usman is throwing those shots, Burns will be able to catch him. He will be able to catch him. And if we see anything like any perennial nerve kicks or those kicks just behind the knee, right, that do that awful damage just behind the knee, you're gonna see some interesting shit. Because if Usman can't pressure because his legs aren't working, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna fight going backwards? We've never seen that. Is he gonna shoot for takedowns in the middle of the cage? That's gonna get super interesting. The only thing we've then got is he's going to have to pressure up Gilbert Burns against the fence. Now, Gilbert Burns is absolutely going to spend some time up against that fence. Every single person that fights Usman spends some time there. But it's what happens in between, right? It's what happens in between. So, yeah, that's why
it's going to be very interesting to see. Like, it's all going to be, and the leg kicks could play a major factor, but it will be up to Usman to manage his distance control quite well. He's either going to have to be all the way out or all the way in.
100%.
Like, if we were to go back to McGregor, if he used to find himself in the pocket, just eating leg kicks all the time, yeah, that's going to be big trouble for him.
I agree. So we'll move right on to you, Ian. If you could break us down for Maycee Barber versus Alexa Grasso, please.
Yeah, so, this is Maycee's first fight back since she damaged her ACL against Roxanne Matafederi. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised to see the UFC's putting her straight in. Surprised and not surprised, I guess, to see her being put straight in the co-main event slot here. It shows what the UFC really think of her as a fighter. But, after her first loss, I don't think that I don't know if it's added pressure to her or not. Like, she'll be the one to tell you that, but I don't know if it was completely necessary to put her in the co-main event here. But you know, she'll have. It's going to be a true test of character for her coming into this fight. You know, her first loss of her career. She was really, really hyped up before that loss to Modafferi. Unfortunately for her, her knee went, I guess. I don't know whether it was in the first round or the second round, but we definitely seen it in the second round against Modafferi when she hurt her knee. And it's hard to take too much out of that fight considering she was on one leg. But one thing that we can do is that she had the opportunity in that fight to quit or to bow out of that fight at any stage, and she gritted it out and she kept it going even with that injury. So that's good to see. It shows that she has good heart. You know, with Maycee Barber, we might forget that she's only 22 years of age. You know, she's
22 years old.
Yeah, she's very, very young in her MMA career, and you know, the lack of experience maybe going in with someone against, like, with the experience of Roxy, you know, that can play a factor as well. We may even get to see it at rematch down the line. Like, at 22 years of age, things that I've picked out watching a couple of her old fights is that she's very relaxed in the cage for a young fighter, very comfortable in the cage. But sometimes I think she can get maybe a little bit too comfortable, and she's kind of starts a little bit slow sometimes. Like, Barber prefers to be on the front foot. The power that she's got in her hands gives her huge confidence going in here, where she'll just likes the forward pressure. She likes to get her opponents trapped into the corner of the octagon, get their backs against the cage and just wade on punches. And she did that very well against Gillian Robertson. And I'd imagine that's what she's going to be looking to do here against Alessia Grasso. Grasso is the style of fighter that would really suit Maycee Barber here. So it's a good stylistic matchup for Barber. I think Alessia Grasso is going to look to keep it on the feet as well. She likes to move forward as well. She likes to land heavy shots. Grasso is super aggressive. She has been in a lot of her previous fights, and she'll have to be very careful coming in here against Barber, because if you get too aggressive or you overreach on some of your punches, Barber does have that power where she can put anybody out on any day if she lands flush. You know, she's like, at 22, she's still a very big 125 pounder. Like, she's very big for that weight class, and she carries the weight well. I know she has fought before at 115, Maycee Barber, hasn't she?
I think so. Yeah,
I believe so. I think she had some struggle, so I'm glad to see her up here.
Yeah, she fought in LFA at 115. She made her debut.
I know for sure Alessia Grasso did fight at 115 as well. Yes. She made her flyweight debut the last time against Ji Young Kim, and it was a very good fight from her as well. So she fits into the 125 pound weight class very well. This one is going to be, I can't see this one going the distance. I think it's a great stylistic matchup for Maycee Barber. You know, I think it was a very smart to put her in this slot and I mean, when I say that, I think it's very smart for the UFC to put Barber into this spot against a fighter like Grasso, who's going to play into the game plan of Maycee Barber and come forward and try to land those big shots. And we've seen that happen before when Barber fought JJ Aldrich, and Aldrich tried to do that as well and was very successful in JJ Aldrich got Maycee Barber moving backwards quite well in the first round of that fight, where she actually dropped her with a punch as well. But Barber, she came back into the second round, switched it up again, put herself on the front foot, and ended up getting JJ Aldrich out of there. So heart and grit is not a problem with Maycee Barber. How is her mentality coming into this fight? How is she after her leg injury? Those are all the questions that are going to need to be answered next Saturday night when they fight. I think that Maycee Barber should bounce back with a win. I think that this fight is set up for her to win, but she will have to tread carefully. She cannot be overconfident here when someone like Grasso, who does have some big power, she has a big overhand right. She can put people down with that power as well. So It should be a good stand-up battle, and I fancy Maycee Barber to get the nod. I think Maycee Barber probably has enough to get her out of there, I would say.
Ian's already fucking done everything for us. He's given us picks. He's given us everything. Jack, have you got anything to add on there?
Maybe one or two bits, but that was a really, really strong summary. I think Ian alluded to Barber's physicality, which I think is could be the key to her getting the win here. Especially Grasso wasn't the biggest strawweight, to be honest. She's absolutely not the biggest flyweight, and as Maycee's only 22, she's going to be growing into that frame, and she already commanded quite a lot of. Well, you could see she was very, very physically strong, and you saw that in the exchanges that she's had with the likes of Julian Robertson, for example, who in herself is a fairly strong grappler at 125. I think the key here is if this fight turns into a 15-minute kickboxing fight, which I think is very much possible. I think it's pretty much 50-50. I would probably lean towards Grasso's output over Barber's power at this point. The key here for Barber, I think, is going to be mixing in some takedowns. If we look through Alexa Grasso's career, she never encountered a Joanna or a Jessica Andrade or whoever, but every fight that was contested on the feet, she won pretty handedly. The only times we've really seen Alexa in spots of trouble were late against Randa Marcos, where she was taken down. Obviously, numerous takedowns against Esparza, Tatiana Suarez, completely buzzsawed through her. And even someone like Felice Herrig, right, who isn't necessarily noted for their wrestling capabilities, was still able to ground Alexa Grasso. Now, I think we saw in the Esparza fight, she was a lot better off her back than perhaps we'd seen before. She offered some offense, and that fight actually was probably could have gone either way. So I think they're going to be the keys to victory for Barber. I think she has a few more avenues to win here, but who knows how she's going to look coming off this injury, right? I think that's obviously the biggest question.
Well, it'll be confidence in herself, confidence in how her leg will hold up. You know, if you're Grasso here, you're going to kick the shit out of that leg the minute that she gets in there and tested, you know. And I'm super interested to see how Maycee bounces back. But it was a very good point that you made, Jack, about shooting in the takedowns. And even if you're not to go for the takedowns or commit to the takedowns, a simple level change just gets Grasso thinking about that takedown, which can open up some strikes on the feet as well.
Completely agree. And I actually think Maycee is probably most dangerous with ground and pound. I think that's actually her outstanding skill for me from watching her past fights. That's where she's really differentiated herself. She's incredibly aggressive. Obviously, she's very headstrong as well. And I think if that's going to be the key to victory for her. If she can blend some of those takedowns and some ground and pound into her striking, I think she'll run away with this.
Right. So you've stolen everything I have to say. So might as well make picks. So. Jack, can you give me a pick?
Yeah, I will take Maycee Barber by decision. I think it's going to be 29-28. They're very close.
Ian?
I'm going to go Barber round 2 KO.
Jesus. Fucking hell, we've got some finishes coming from Ian. I am also going to take Barber by decision. I think Grasso obviously has ways to win. And I think if that leg doesn't hold up, then Barber's in for a real tough fight. But look, I mean, I think it's a nice styles matchup for Barber to come back to and slide her right on into the co-main event. Jack, do you want to talk to us about Kelvin Gastelum versus Ian Heinisch?
Yes, I would love to. So I got quite excited when this got announced, and then I've slowly become less excited. And I don't think that's because it's going to be a bad fight, but I think the two of the things that I enjoy the most about these guys is their counter wrestling. Right, they're both from wrestling backgrounds, however, predominantly do their best work in boxing exchanges. Gastelum, obviously, infamous for just being able to turn to turtle whenever he's been taken down and then just effortlessly stand up to his feet whilst Chris Weidman's kind of hanging off the side of him. Likewise, Ian Heinisch, hilarious Granbies. No one's been able to even come close to taking his back yet. And that's immediately when I thought when the fight was announced, I was like, oh, how fantastic are these wrestling exchanges going to be? But the more I've thought about it, the more I realized that this is probably just set up to be a 15-minute kickboxing bout. In that sense, I favour Kelvin. I know he's on a bit of a skid at the moment. Obviously, absorbed a lot of damage in that war with Adesanya. Till was able to kind of spook him into a relatively inactive performance. And I think that was as well as Till fought, I think it was definitely lackluster from Kelvin. Even things such as his head movement weren't the same as that fight against Izzy. And then he was flash shoved by Hermanson last time out. With that being said, I think his boxing is a lot sharper than Heinisch's, who's only really just started to polish up his striking after leaving. He was with Factory X, right? And he's or has he just moved to Factory X?
Good question.
I think he was with Factory X, and then I think he's training. Well, he was. I think for the Meerschaert fight, he was out in Thailand. I could be mistaken.
Yeah, it's Factory X. Heinisch is in Factory X. That's right.
Got it. Okay. So perhaps he was doing the stint in Thailand before, but I think in that small minute or whatever it was against Meerschaert, it did seem like his hands had tightened up a little bit, albeit he was going against the glassily slow Gerald Meerschaert. But I think it's going to be a good fight. I think it will at least be entertaining. And I'm leaning Kelvin at the moment to land the cleaner strikes and take a decision here.
I agree. I'm not really sure there's much more to add, to be honest. I think, both Ian Heinisch is like a shit Kelvin Gastelum. Do you know what I mean? They're like, they're similar fighting styles, but Kelvin's just rounded his style out a little bit more. I would like to see some wrestling exchanges, but I don't really see it. And I agree. I think Kelvin's just way too slick on the feet, way too tough. They're both tough, but way too tough, way too slick. And I can't see Kelvin dropping this one. I think this is Kelvin's fight to lose. Ian, have you got anything to add?
Not too much to add. I agree with what you guys have been saying. Yeah, it's more likely going to be a stand-up battle. It's a good matchup for Kelvin Gastelum. He's lost against 3 top competitors. And he needs a win badly. For Ian Heinisch, he's been in there before, and he hasn't got the win against guys like Derek Brunson or Akhmedov and stuff like that. He'll be looking to really stake a claim here, but I think he's probably going to fall short. Gastelum has been in with much better competition, probably more experienced overall than Heinisch, and I feel that he can get the job done here for sure.
So what's your official pick?
My pick is Kelvin Gastelum by decision.
I'm going with the same. I think that Kelvin does really well against anyone ranked lower than him. Anyone that's destined for that top 5 or title contention, that's where he seems to slip up, right? And then anyone below than him generally gets a whacking. So that's why I picked Kelvin. Jack, have you got anything different to pick?
No, that's it. I think we've nailed this one, guys. I'm also going Gastelum by decision. Excellent.
So I'm going to move on to Pedro Munhoz versus Jimmie Rivera. And, this feels like a bit of a strange fight for both of them. Before I really had a look, I felt like this was going to be a great fight. This is, somebody gets back into title contention, blah, blah, blah. But actually, in the coronavirus era and in the era of the UFC, happy to cut sort of anyone that's a name to make a bit of money, it feels like a bit of a crossroads fight, frankly. Jimmie Rivera's 2-3 in his last 5. Pedro Munhoz is coming on a 2-fight skid after knocking out Cody Garbrandt. I don't know. It feels like a bit of a strange matchup for these two guys that we've kind of become really accustomed to hearing about and watching fight. It wouldn't surprise me if the loser of this gets cut. I really, really wouldn't surprise me.
I sincerely hope not. Harry, I have to ask this question, just given the history of the podcast, but this is a rematch, right?
I do know this is a rematch, yes.
Okay, I was just checking.
Yeah, you're such a fucking prick.
Sean's not here. Someone's got to be the dickhead.
Yeah, it's true. That's fine. I mean, their first fight was 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, that makes me feel old. And I rewatched that the other day, and I remember thinking, oh, it was a great fight, and I forgot how great it was.
Yeah, I feel like even though I think Pedro's the older man, isn't he?
No, yes, I think Pedro's older.
Pedro is older by 3 years. I feel like Pedro has made more improvements in the last 6 years, 5 years than Jimmie Rivera has. And I put this down to a couple of things. I think the first thing is Jimmie Rivera owns his own gym and trains out of his own gym. So there isn't a high level training camp around him. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure he's got good training partners. I'm sure he's got good sparring partners. He's got access to these things, but his predominant camp is Tiger Schulman's, right? Whereas Pedro Munhoz is not the same. Pedro, he fights out of Coconut Creek, right? So ATT guys are there and all of this stuff is there. And I feel like the improvements of Pedro have been paramount. Now, okay, you drop a fight to Aljamain Sterling, fine. whatever. Aljamain Sterling is arguably number 1, number 2 when we find out after Petian. Like, we'll see. And the split decision against Frankie Edgar was a very close fight. It was, it could have gone either way, in my opinion. I feel like Jimmie, however, has stagnated. He's going to walk forward, put his hands to the top of his temple and try and take some shots. If he can get you down, that's great. If he can't, then he's probably going to lose a decision, right? I don't see a route that Pedro doesn't win this, frankly. I will, because Jack now seems like vastly confused. Go on, I'll offer you your thoughts, Jack.
I wouldn't say confused, because I think the first fight was very, very close and competitive. And I also agree that I think Pedro's added more skills to his toolkit since they last fought, right? He's a much more confident striker now. He's focused a lot more on his leg kicks as well, especially because he's got quite a short reach for 135. I do think that it's hard to say. I don't want to say Jimmie Rivera is a bad matchup for him, because I think that these guys could fight 10 times and I think it's going to be really, really close and competitive each time. I just think that if Pedro can't take Jimmie down, I think that was proven in the first fight. I think Jimmie's got some of the best takedown defense at 35, which means that this is going to be another kickboxing bout again, most probably. And I think that Jimmie is far better at throwing in combination, finishing his combinations with kicks. I think in that first fight, I think the second round there was especially exciting. I think they traded knockdowns and guillotine attempts and wheel kicks and all sorts in that second round. But Jimmie was able to hurt Pedro, which I think is a massive testament, because as we've seen through the Garbrandt fights, and I mean, both of these guys have had incredible resumes at 135 and have really fought a who's who. But Pedro's been incredibly durable, and Jimmie was still able to sting him there. And I think whilst Pedro's probably had more success since their first fight, I think that's fair to say, right? He's obviously had the big Garbrandt win. He's got Brian Caraway. He probably, in my opinion, he definitely beat Frankie Edgar, but that's for another day. I think it's easy to look into Jimmie's more recent performances and think, oh, perhaps he's on a bit of a slide. But out of everyone, and I would put this up against there with Aldo as well, I thought Jimmie looked really, really good against Yan and did kind of what he needed to do. And outside of him getting buzzed, I think he was outstriking Yan for large portions of that fight. I think it's going to be incredibly competitive. I wouldn't be shocked to see it go either way. But unlike yourself, Harry, I'm actually going to stick with Jimmie Rivera here. I think he's going to win another very high output, entertaining kickboxing battle.
We can't be friends. Ian, thoughts?
Yeah, you guys summed it up quite well there. And I'm the same opinion. I think it's going to be mainly stand-up battle. I think that it's a flip of a coin who gets this win. Like, Rivera will go in there with the confidence of getting that win before against Munhoz. I do feel what you guys said, and I think that Munhoz has progressed more as a fighter than what Jimmie Rivera has. It's a toss of a coin, and I'm going to go with Pedro Munhoz to win a very, very, very close decision. It could go either way.
That's my man. And you're taking Rivera decision, Jack, yeah?
I am indeed, yeah.
All right. Well, we will move on to Julian Marquez versus Maki Pitolo. Jack, do you want to tell us what you think about this fight, as you are Maki Pitolo's best picker?
I am. I think I'm unbeaten in picking Maki Pitolo fights. But this one's actually really, really difficult. And the reason for that is Julian Marquez hasn't fought in coming up on not far off 3 years, right? It's been like 2.5 years since he last fought.
Yeah, 2018.
Looked to be a decent prospect by middleweight standards. Picked up some nice finishes over Darren Stewart and Phil Hawes, fellow prospects, and then had a really, really close competitive fight with Alessio Di Chirico, and it probably could have gone either way. And then since then, he's been shelved. Do you guys have any insight as to what his injuries have been?
I know he had shoulder surgery.
Okay.
I don't know if there was anything following on from that. Okay.
So I think one thing that's always interesting, and we touched on this a little bit with Maycee Barber, is when someone's coming back from such a significant injury, it's one of the things that's most difficult to gauge outside of kind of the rust and how they're going to feel in the cage after that time off is the improvements they've made, right? Because you don't know if it's been exactly They've had just enough time to rest and recover, and then they've jumped right back into a fight camp, right? Or have they taken a little bit longer? And you want to jump in, Harry?
Yeah, sorry. All I say is he actually got to a fight week against Saparbek Safarov at the end of 2020. Now, okay, don't get me wrong, that's still nearly 2 years that he's been out of the cage, but you know, Safarov fucked his weight cut over. So, you know, he's at least been in fight shape for 4 months now.
Okay, so I would suggest then, well, I would hope then that given where Marquez is at this point in his career, like I think he's not even had 10 fights yet, is it? He's still
his 10th fight.
He's very much green. I would hope that we will see improvements out of him, because I think he's got a decent base athletically. He's shown skills in all areas as well. Maki Pitolo, meanwhile, I feel like we've got a pretty good gauge on what we're going to get from Maki. He is Hawaiian, and he fights in a very Hawaiian style. He doesn't offer too much outside of exceptional. Exceptional is probably a bit strong, but Maki's a decent striker. He's confident. That's where he wants to be. Works the body nicely as well. Fairly high output. Providing that Julian Marquez doesn't come in with any kind of lingering issues as a result of that injury, I think he's probably going to be able to hang with Maki on the feet. I think he packs a lot more power than Maki, albeit his striking maybe isn't quite as neat. And I think if he takes Maki down as well, I think he's going to have a fairly easy time, because I think, as we've seen, that's definitely not where Maki wants to be. So should be fun. Not too sure it deserves a place as the main card opener, but I'm at least happy to see Julian Marquez, hopefully, back in the octagon.
Yeah, I agree. I think before I just pass over to Ian, I think the other thing that we should note about Maki Pitolo is 2-fight losing streak, been finished in one of those fights. Dana White looking happily to get rid of people. You know, I think, you know, we touched on Rhys McKee before, right? Rhys McKee is a massive name in comparison to Maki Pitolo, right? And he got cut off 2 fights, 2 losses. And the first fight against Khamzat Chimaev, look, it is what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes these things happen in MMA. And the Alex Morono fight, I mean, okay, maybe you could argue Rhys got an extended break after his gum shield flew underneath the cage. But you know, in that third round, he was putting the pressure on Alex Morono, and that was a great fight. As just to watch was a great fight, right?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal fight.
You know, he lost the first round handily, lost the second round, and then the third round, you know, was a lot closer. But a phenomenal fight to watch. And back in the day, you wouldn't be cut off a fight like that. You'd be given another chance, you know, especially when you were fed short notice to a hype train like Khamzat Chimaev, you know. Yeah. So I would not be surprised.
With Rhys, it's like, you know, you probably would have liked to see him get maybe one more shot in there.
Agree.
I feel that he probably deserved to get one more shot.
I agree.
But, you know, it may be a blessing in disguise for him that he's, after taking a step back now, he'll go back onto the regional scene and he'll approach it differently, I think, second time around. And I don't think it's the last time we're going to see Rhys McKee in the UFC. I think he's going to be there. He's too good of a fighter not to get back there. Might have been a little bit too much too soon, but he didn't have an easy ride when he went in there. And you know, hopefully we'll see him back there eventually.
What wouldn't surprise me is, just to divert again, Rhys McKee goes back to Cage Warriors. He jumps straight into a 170 title and he wins that, and then he's straight back off to the UFC.
Rhys McKee versus Ian Garry, 2021, at the end of 2021 in the welterweight. What do you think of that?
God,
I want a bit of that.
That is.
What? That, yeah, give me all of that.
I'll just say now, Ian Garry's phenomenal, but there's a wealth of experience difference there.
Absolutely, I agree. But, you know, if we get Ian Garry in there with another 2 or 3 fights and maybe have a fight at the end of the year, it might make it a little interesting.
Can we do it in the 3 Arena? Can we do it in the 3 Arena?
A full house in the 3 Arena, whenever that may be, that would be great, wouldn't it?
That would be phenomenal. God, Jesus, can we talk about Jesus? If that happens, we'll do a breakdown for that fight, because that is a cracking fight. But yeah, sorry. Anyway, back to Julian Marquez, Maki Pitolo. Ian, have you got any thoughts on the fight?
I think Marquez is the better fighter overall. I think he has enough ability to get the job done. How he gets it done, I'm not too sure. He definitely has the ability to put Pitolo away if he wants. He's got the power in his hands and he's got solid kicks as well. After being so out of the cage for such a long time, is he going to want to give himself some cage time? I'm kind of thinking he will want to spend as much time as possible in there, not having been in there for so long. I think if he didn't get injured, I think this would be probably a round 1, round 2 KO. I feel that he might want a bit of cage time and just to feel comfortable and get that time in there. So I'm going to go with Marquez to win by decision.
Okay. Jack?
I'm going to take Marquez by submission, and I'm going to put my neck on the line, no pun intended, and I'm going to say Julian Marquez picks up a guillotine at some point in the fight. Don't make me pick a round. Rounds are always so difficult.
Pick a round.
I'll go second again. I'm feeling like a second rounder today.
For the first time, we always, just for reference, Ian, we always fucking hate picking the same things. So thankfully, we've all kind of picked something different. I'm taking Julian Marquez via round 2 knockout. I think Maki is too happy to take shots to land shots, and Julian just has too much power. And I feel like that's just the way it's going to go. So we'll move on to the newly added fight, which is Bobby Green, Jim Miller, which is the top of the prelims. I kind of love this fight, really. Jim Miller, I have an unbelievable soft spot for. Like, it's like watching your dad go and fight. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
That's what it feels like to me. You know, he fucks off Lyme disease and then he just jumps on in the cage and guillotines people. Like, I just love that. I just
legend.
Love that. Ian, do you want to give your quick thoughts on Bobby Green and Jim Miller and how you think it'll go down?
Yeah, it is. This just has a fun fight written all over it. You know, Bobby Green is always exciting to look at. You know, he gets in there, he throws some flashy strikes, he talks some shit. And he had a pretty busy 2020 considering all things that were going on. I think he fought maybe 4 times last year, with 3 wins and 1 loss. So he's picked up some decent wins along the way as well. You know, he got wins over Clay Guida and Lando Venata. He just fell short against Thiago Moises in the last fight. That's a fight that could have went either way. I remember watching that. It was a super close fight. And as you said about Jim Miller, just absolute legend. He's up there with, I think, the most UFC fights from a fighter in the UFC right now. He's had a shit ton of fights in the UFC. How many
fights do you think these two have had between them combined? Just off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head, about 70, I think, would be the number, wouldn't it?
Jack, you're a scrub.
Sorry, I got
86 fights between them.
Wow, that's crazy. Like, that's 2 legends of the game that are going against one another here. And you know, I loved seeing Jim Miller come back from his troubles with Lyme disease, which is a pretty bad disease, and just him coming back alone to compete is an achievement in its own, let alone coming back and getting back onto the win column and stuff like that. You know, he's coming back off a loss now. This is a very well matched fight for the 2 of them. Another fight that could go either way. 2 really good grapplers and 2 guys who are not afraid to throw bombs on the feet. It's going to be a super exciting fight.
I agree. I think the way this is going to go is one of 2 ways. I think either Bobby Green will win a decision, or Jim Miller will finish him early with something, an armbar or a rear naked or a guillotine or something. That seems to be the way. You know, we saw it kind of with Vince Pichel, where Pichel was able to shut down the grappling of Miller and, you know, implement his own grappling, and then he was just stronger on the feet. You know, he just landed more damage and forced Jim back. And I thought that I think that's either going to be the way, right? Bobby's either going to land more damage, outlast Jim, and land the better shots, or Jim will take him down, catch something, get Roosevelt Roberts or something like that. Jack, what are your thoughts?
No, I'm in complete agreement with you guys. I think that even though Jim's got over the battle with Lyme disease in his at 37, he is starting to fade a little bit, especially down the stretch. We saw that against both Holtzman and Pichel, despite strong efforts early. And I think the first round will be fun. Definitely the most dangerous round for Jim. I think he can flash sub pretty much most of that division. But I think I think Bobby Green will keep this on the feet for most of it, box Jim up, and likely run away with the decision.
So, Jack, what are you taking just officially?
Yeah, Bobby Green, unanimous decision.
Okay. Ian?
Yeah, I'm thinking the same too. Green will have to be careful early days, but I think he has enough to stop that takedown from Miller. I think that he is slightly better on the feet, a little bit quicker and faster on the feet, and I think he picks Jim Miller apart and gets a decision win.
All right, well, fuck you both. Picking against my dad, I'm going with Jim Miller, round 1, jump the gilly. Let's fucking go.
I've got a lot of respect for that pick, Harry.
Excellent. So Jack, the reason why I gave you the next fight is because obviously there's a vast grappling story to this. So do you want to just talk me through Rodolfo Viera with a H versus Anthony Hernandez, please?
Yes, I can talk you through Rodolfo. So this matchup is quite predictable, but I'm really, really glad it's been put together. And the reason for that is I think that the UFC will always favour prospects who are more exciting to the casual fan base, right? Anyone who's predominantly a striker will probably get a little bit more of maybe a little bit more favoritism from the matchmakers, whereas grapplers don't always have it so easy. Now, when the UFC picked up Rodolfo, they picked him up at 5-0, right? He was very, very green, just went a few years into his MMA journey, and I was a little bit worried that he would kind of be fast tracked, and I think that's a theme that we've seen with a lot of prospects over the years. They do tend to get one decent win under their belt, and then all of a sudden they're fighting middle of the pack, kind of top 20-ish, and their progression halts and they get lost. The good thing about this fight is I think it's really, really safe for Rodolfo. If we look at Rodolfo's current skill set, he's still very green on the feet. There seemed to be a little bit of a confidence issue still. We even saw that against Sapaveg Safarov, who again, definitely lower end of the division. He was throwing up some interesting front kicks and whatnot, and kind of jarred Viera a little bit at the start of that fight. And what we've seen is as soon as Viera is able to get this down, it's been relatively smooth sailing. He is a decent wrestler, considering he's coming from a jiu-jitsu background. That ties down to the fact that he was known in jiu-jitsu for his passing, specifically leg drags and kind of Toriando side-to-side passing. So he needs to be on top, right? Not to say that his jiu-jitsu, he wouldn't find success in MMA if he was pulling guard and whatnot, but he is definitely at home on top, where he can use his suffocating top pressure. Anthony Hernandez, it's kind of difficult to gauge in terms of what we're going to see from him. He's still quite young in his career as well, less than 10 fights. Picked up some good wins pre-UFC. Outlasted Brendan Allen in a 5-round decision over an LFA.
That's a big win, in my opinion.
It's a decent win. I think Brendan. So not to
don't shit on Sean's biggest hype train. Don't do it.
I like Brendan Allen, but if you kind of look back through his career, he does have a little bit of a history in fading, and I think.
God.
Yeah, well, Sean can bury me for that another day and tell me why I'm wrong. He then battered Jordan Wright on the Contender Series quickly, and I thought we've got a pretty decent prospect on our hands. He then looked absolutely trash against a fighter I have zero respect for in Marcus Perez, who's, I don't even, outside of just attempting random submission attempts, I couldn't really name you anything else that Marcus Perez does well. He pulled it back. He was getting battered on the feet and was able to anaconda choke Junyon Park. And then most recently, he was absolutely whacked by Kevin Holland in less than a minute. So
certified
I think
whacking.
That was a certified whacking. So I think it's really, really difficult to get a gauge on what we're going to see from Hernandez. Obviously, he's going to want to keep this on the feet. I think the fact that someone with a skill set as kind of, don't want to use the word low, as small of a skill set as Marcus Perez was able to take down Anthony Hernandez just basically means that for me, this fight is decided. Unless Hernandez is able to get to Viera's chin and freak him out a little bit before he's able to get taken down. Anything outside of a Rodolfo Viera quick sub would be a massive shock for me. So that's kind of my thoughts. I think Viera is the biggest favorite on the card. I think he is for a reason. I'm not necessarily in favor of everyone getting this kind of treatment, like in terms of slow progression, but I definitely think it's needed for Viera, and I'm glad to see it.
Ian?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this fight is set up for Viera to get in there, get the takedown as quickly as he can, and get that submission. He's an expert on the ground. Anthony Hernandez has had his difficulties. It's a tough fight to come into after getting knocked out in the first round against Kevin Holland for Hernandez. But I think that Viera overall is going to be a little bit too much for him. I think he's going to get first round submission.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I will say for poor Anthony Hernandez that you've both just utterly shat on is the loss to Marcus Perez was 2 years ago, exactly, right? Almost to the day 2 years ago. Now, if he knew that coming from that fight, takedown defense was a problem, you have 2 whole years in order to work on that. Now, is that enough to close the gap against Rodolfo Viera? Probably not. But at least, we maybe if we give him a little bit of respect, right? Just a little bit. So, Ian, you're going sub round 1, yeah?
Yeah, I am. Like with Hernandez, he's going to have to get the respect of Viera early on in the fight. But the problem with doing that, he's not going to get the respect through grappling. So he's going to have to get it with the stand-up game. Problem is when you're trying to implement the stand-up game against a grappler, if you overcommit to some strikes, you are going to find yourself on your back. And I feel that or if you stand back, you're going to get pushed back against the fence. So it's a real fine line for Anthony Hernandez in this fight and what he does in order to get the win. I just think it's a bad stylistic matchup for him, and that's why I went for the first round sub. But, anything can happen in MMA.
Look, I mean, I'm throwing Anthony Hernandez under the bus as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm taking Viera versus a certified whacking round 1. I imagine I'd like to see a head and arm choke. That's what I want to see from Rodolfo. Jack?
Yeah. Rodolfo gingerly walks forward. Hernandez overcommits on a punch. Big double leg, probably up against the cage. Beastie Rodolfo top pressure. A little bit of squeezing. Happy days.
Just a little bit of squeezing. Not even a big bit of squeeze.
He doesn't need to, mate. When you got a back like a Ninja Turtle, mate, you don't even need to put your full effort into it.
Do you reckon if he squeezed hard enough with all of his back pressure, he'd actually pop Anthony Hernandez's head off?
Mate, I think if he committed all of his squeeze and all of his pressure, the only thing Hernandez would be able to move was his eyes.
blink twice for tapping out. Then I guess that would be it.
Jesus Christ. All right, so we're all picking the same thing. I hate both of you. So we'll move on to Dhiego Lima versus Belal Muhammad. Now, on the podcast before, when we had Lyman Good versus Belal Muhammad, both Jack and Sean brutally shot my analysis down, and it then came 100% true. So I'm going to take this fight because I actually think this is a way, way easier styles matchup for Belal Muhammad than Lyman Good is. The reason for that is Lima does not possess anywhere near the power that Lyman Good does. He's a kickboxer and whatever, but I feel like this is, we made a comparison to somebody else before, but this is like Dhiego Lima is a 1.0 of a decent kickboxer, right? He doesn't have the stopping power. He's got the movement. He's got the kicking. He's got this. He's got that. But Belal Muhammad has such a brilliant way to get inside. He's a shorter man for the weight class, right? But he gets inside and he throws a massive left hook. His footwork is beautiful. I love to watch Belal Muhammad fight. Now, what we have seen from Dhiego Lima is that he is susceptible on the ground, right? It's been finished by rear naked choke a couple of times. And I really, really, really could see that happening here. Belal Muhammad is super dominant when he gets you down. If he gets you down, it's really hard to get back up. And he's improving his striking game all the time. I think we saw that against Lyman Good when essentially he put on a clinic against Lyman Good, and I was really impressed. And okay, Lyman Good was just coming off coronavirus, and who knows what that did to his cardio, right? But I was super impressed with Belal Muhammad, and I think we'll see another super impressive finish here. I just to give my pick early because I don't really think there's much to say about this. I think Belal Muhammad gets him outside of there inside 2 rounds. Jack,
I'm in agreement with you. Yeah, I've always rooted for Dhiego Lima, and I think it's it must be difficult for him, right, for his brother to endure so much success while he's been barely kind of keeping his position on the roster.
Just be less shit,
mate. If only it was that easy. So, yeah, I agree with what you say. I think, to be honest, Lima's got a sneaky lead hand, and maybe he could clip Belal, but Belal has proven to be very, very durable in his UFC career outside of that kind of Vicente Luque fight and some damage. and the damage he does against Shaban. Yeah. So, yeah, I can't really. I think the striking will be more competitive than perhaps we think. Lima's had a little bit of time off recently, so hopefully we've seen some progression from his side. But yeah, I agree with you, Harry. I think it's going to be a rough night for Dhiego, and I also think that Belal is probably going to get him out of there as well.
Ian, do you want to round us off?
Yeah, I agree with you guys in saying that it's primarily going to be a stand-up battle, and I believe Belal is the better striker overall. The competition that he has been fighting is slightly better as well. You know, Lima has a good win back in 2019 over McGee, which he won by split decision, which was a close fight too. But I think that Muhammad is probably just going to pick him apart on the feet. I'm not too sure about him getting him out of there early, so that for that reason I'm just going to go Belal Muhammad to win by decision.
Okay, Jack, what's your official pick?
I'm going to go Belal Muhammad by TKO in round 1. Okay,
so I'm going TKO round 2. Yeah, I just think, I've given my points. Ian, do you want to take us away for Polyana Viana versus Mallory Martin, please?
Sure, yeah. Strawweight fight between these two ladies, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight. They both have had a similar opponent in Heinisch Cyphers, and both of them similarly got dropped from Cyprus from big overhand right. When you're looking at Viana, she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist, a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and always will be looking to take the fight down to the ground whenever she can. I've seen her pull guard a couple of times in fights, and that's where she feels most comfortable. She does have some good straight punches and good kicks, but she does leave her chin out there a little bit, and Hannah Cyphers caught her with a big overhand right. So she's going to have to be careful with that. You know, she grew into the fight against Cyphers and ended up losing a decision, I think. But her next fight and her last fight that she fought, she looked a lot leaner, a lot more suitable to the 115-pound weight class in that fight. I felt that against Cyphers, she might have been carrying a little bit more weight than she did when she came in against Emily Whitmer. And yeah, that was a pretty quick fight. We didn't get to see too much of her stand up against Whitmer. She got taken down, and actually Viana found herself in side control and excellently got into the guard, and she locked in and a very nice armbar there against Whitmer. So, you know, coming in here against Mallory Martin, she actually, I found out something very interesting about Mallory Martin. She fought the majority of her career with a torn ACL, which she only got fixed. Yeah, she only got it fixed in 2018. So she came into the UFC through Dana White's Contender Series, and you know, she's calm, she's composed, she likes to stand in front of her opponents and get off her big heavy shots, but she did find herself getting dropped by Hannah Cyphers with that big overhand right too. So both of these fighters are going to be going in there looking for that shot, I think. You know, with Viana, when you're such a good grappler, and we see it time and time again with fighters, you know, when you have such confidence in your ground game, it gives you the ability to open up on the feet, and that's what Viana does whenever she's allowed to do that. Her boxing isn't her best aspect of her game, but like I said, she's long and she's rangy, and she uses her jab and her straight punches and her kicks to keep the fight and her opponent at the distance that she wants. She is probably going to be wanting to take this fight down to the ground as quickly as she can. You know, Martin went in there. She lost her last fight against Jandaroba by rear naked choke, which she took at short notice. But you know, she showed good heart in that win against Cyphers when she got dropped, and she came back into the second round and got the finish there. So that will give her a lot of confidence coming into this fight. But yeah, it's a close fight. This fight could be down to whoever wants it more on the night, or whoever can implement their game plan more so. What do you guys think?
I feel like the book is written a little bit on the way to beat Mallory Martin, and Virna Jandiroba was the lady that wrote that book.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got now, Virna Jandiroba is a serious grappler, right? You know,
Yeah.
we saw that in all of her fights, frankly, in the UFC and outside. But I think Polyana Viana knows how good her jiu-jitsu is and is as confident as she is in her jiu-jitsu. Now, she also holds a 3-inch reach advantage, right? As you've said, she's long for the weight class. She can use that to implement her shots. I feel like somebody against Mallory Martin who just wants to throw big overhand rights, you're going to get taken down, right? And when you get taken down, Polyana Viana is super comfortable in keeping you there and working her top game. So I feel like either Mallory Martin has to change up her style a little bit for this fight and throw a little bit more technical, a little bit more composed, and a little bit more compact, or I feel like it's Viana's fight to win. Jack?
Yeah, I think in the nicest way possible, I don't think either lady is going to have a spot on the roster for much longer. And I know we was talking about kind of forthcoming cuts. I think the loser of this will probably get their walking papers as well. I agree with what you guys say in that I think it's stylistically quite a good fight for Polyana Viana. Now, she is someone who has shot me in the foot numerous times picking her. But if we look at this fight in terms of a striking battle, I think Viana has more tools. I think she throws more confidently on the feet. And Mallory Martin does her best work on the ground. And we know that's actually where Viana's strength lies. So I think stylistically, it's a bit rough for Martin. I think in order to get her best work done, she's going to have to go into Viana's wheelhouse. And I think most likely Viana will ensnare something from the bottom and catch a submission.
So what's your official pick?
I'm going to go with submission in round... I'm going to go for submission in round 2.
So that's exactly the same pick as me. Ian?
I'm going to go for a submission in round 1 for Viana.
Damn. No respect for Mallory Martin. We like that.
I think that it's like... with Mallory Martin, it's such a tough fight for her because, like Jack said, her main aspect of her game is her grappling, that she likes to get to the fight down, and that's just simply not going to be an option for her in this fight. You know, I think she'll find herself in deep waters if she goes down and tries to grapple with Viana. That alone is going to give Viana more of an opportunity to open up on the feet, and I think that, you know, she will do just that on the feet. She will open up, which may open up. It may force Mallory Martin to come in and shoot for a takedown, or she might beat her up a little bit on the feet and then go for the takedown herself. I'll go for a round 1. Would not be surprised to see it go into a second round either. Well, just so that we have it different, I'll go for a round 1 sub.
Good man. So if you can also take us through, Ian, what I think is maybe fight of the night, and that is Ricky Simon versus Brian.
Absolutely. Kelleher. This has fight of the night written all over it. I mean, like two buzzsaws, two guys who love like just coming forward and throwing shots and just have cardio for days. You know, I was absolutely devastated that Ricky Simon cut off his mullet. I'm fingers crossed, double fingers crossed that he has that fantastic mullet back for this fight. Both fighters are coming up to the 145-pound division. Both of them are not, well, if you want to call them natural 135ers, they're probably natural 145ers, but both fighters have fought mainly in the bantamweight division in the UFC. Both of them are moving up to 145. So which makes this fight a way better fight than what it could, and it would have been a great fight at 135 too, but the fact that this is at 145 and they're not going to be gassing themselves out in the weight cut or cutting some serious weight, it's going to mean that they're going to come into this fight with bags of energy. They're going to come in, both fighters are going to come in with good power. They've both showcased their power before. With Ricky Simon, it's in his early days, he would like to come forward and take a punch to give a punch, and he kind of got found out doing with that fight tactic against Uriah Faber when he got dropped and finished. Since then, he came in against Ray Borg and it looked like he had his game way more polished, a lot cleaner punches, not throwing as wild. His shot selection was much better. His punching, his body work was very good as well. He's mixing it up and down. And he also has that takedown in his back pocket as well. And what he does so well against his opponents is that he lulls his opponents into thinking that they're going to be into a wild brawl or a wild fight, and then he'll just switch and go for a takedown against the cage. His takedowns are really good. If he goes for a double leg and is struggling, he's not going to give up on it. He's going to go again. He'll turn the corner. He'll get the fight to the ground. And I think that's going to be a very important aspect in this fight against Brian Kelleher, is keeping Kelleher, Ireland's own Brian Kelleher. Yeah. He's going to keep Kelleher guessing whether he wants to take a fight down or keep it on the feet. So that's going to be a good thing. I feel that Ricky Simón is a better striker than Brian Kelleher. I feel that he has better combinations, whereas that Kelleher does have the good power and has shown that in his recent fights as well. But I think that Simón is a slightly better striker on the feet. I'm interested to see who's going to be bigger coming into this fight, who fills out the 145-pound weight class better. With Kelleher, and a thing that Ricky Simón will have to kind of realize coming into this fight is that he can't be sloppy if he's going to attempt takedowns, because Kelleher has a fantastic guillotine.
This was my point.
Yeah, and Kelleher has 6 wins by guillotine throughout his professional career, so that's his go-to, and that's why I feel that the fight will probably be on the feet for the majority of the time. I don't think Ricky Simón is going to want to, I think he feels that he'll have the advantage in the stand-up department, so I don't think he's going to want to utilize the grappling game all that much against Kelleher. Ricky Simón starts quickly. Brian Kelleher starts slowly generally in fights. So Kelleher is going to have to come out of the gates really quick here, or he could find himself, you don't want to be dropping one round in a fight that's going to be super close, and a fight that could go either way. For Kelleher, I feel he has to stay off the cage in this fight, keep it in the middle. Ricky Simón, he does. I think he'll have to stay off the cage now, and I mean keep his back off the cage. Like if he wants to go and he wants to grapple and he wants to be on the front foot in his clinch work on the cage, yeah, we'll go for it. But he doesn't need to have Ricky Simón moving forward, backing him up against the cage, where Simón can get into a clinch against the cage, where he does some great work, where he lulls you in thinking you're going to take you down, and then he'll shoot up and land a combination or some elbows. He does that very well, does Ricky Simón. But it's a fantastic fight. These two guys are going to be hungry for the win, and they're going to go in and they're going to fight, and they're going to go at it hammer and tongue. I can't wait to see this fight.
Jack?
Yeah, I think that was an excellent summary, Ian. I think outside of Pedro Munhoz, Jimmie Rivera, this is definitely my pick for fight of the night. I think that it's very much a 2-outcome fight. Kelleher is not really built to win decisions. He's got a lot of power in his hands, and he's obviously got a wicked guillotine as well. Ricky Simón, meanwhile, whilst he is capable of picking up finishes, I think he's got a lot more process to his game. And I think he's a little bit more well-rounded, and he ties his boxing nicely in with his wrestling as well. For me, I think Simón can be a little bit too hittable. I actually think in this fight, I think he's smart enough to avoid the guillotine, and I think on top of Kelleher, he would have a much safer time. But we know Ricky Simón likes to engage in striking battles, and I don't think he's necessarily someone who I would say has issues with durability, but I do think he can definitely be chin checked. And for that reason, I'm going to side with Brian Kelleher to pick up a finish here.
What round?
I think he's going to get him. I don't want to go with another round 2 pick. I'm going to go with round 1, but just because, just to change things up a little bit. And I think it'll be a TKO. I don't think it'll be a submission.
Ian?
I think that Simón is going to get a unanimous decision victory. I think he's going to be a little bit too much for him. I'm not too worried about him getting clipped or getting finished. Brian Kelleher is very capable of doing that. I'd have to agree with Jack there. I personally think that Simón has developed into a much more patient fighter. He's developed his stand-up game where he has a lot of crisper striking, and his shot selection is good. And we've seen that in his win over Ray Borg. The fact that it's at 145 will help him, and it'll help his chin as well. So that's why I think he's just going to have. I think it's going to be a very close fight, and I think Kelleher might tire out a little bit more than what Simone does, and I think that Simone is going to get the unanimous decision win. So it's going to be a great fight.
I can't believe that Ian is picking against his own countryman, but I think the big key to this fight is 145, right? Yeah. Now, my opinion is Kelleher cuts a lot of weight to get to 135, and I feel like Kelleher will definitely be the bigger man at 145. Now, the big question around this fight for me is, does Kelleher's powers translate to 145? Or do we see Ricky Simone have a bit more power at 145? Now, I agree with you, Ian, that grappling is going to be a big thing for Ricky Simone. However, I don't think you want to be against the cage too much against Kelleher, because if you shoot in on those doubles, you're either going to get McGregor elbowed or you're going to have a guillotine wrapped around your neck very, very quickly. And I think that, Kelleher knows it's in his locker. Simone knows it's in his locker. So I feel like this is going to be contested a little bit more in the open areas of the cage. And I feel like Kelleher will have the power advantage. Ricky Simone, as everyone has already said, it has a tendency to get into dogfights, even though I feel like he's somebody that it feels like it's almost a bit like Justin Gaethje, right? You can teach him how to fight properly, but if someone's like, do you want to have a scrap? They're like, yeah, fuck it, go on then, we'll have a scrap. And you can drag them into that dirty fight. And if that can happen, I feel like Kelleher will land, and I feel like Kelleher will get things done. So I will take a TKO in round 2 for Brian Kelleher. Island's own Brian Kelleher. So we'll move on to the last couple of fights. So Gabe Green and Philip Rowe. Jack, tell us.
Sweet. So I had to do a bit of research on this one. So Phil
you have
Rowe,
an Eastern European report for us?
Unfortunately, none of these guys are from that part of the planet.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, it's not going to be as detailed as it usually is. But yeah, right, Phil Rowe's about 30, trains at the same circle in Florida that Mike Perry, when he was actually training semi-sensibly, used to train at. And he reminds me of a car boot sale Neil Magny. He's got a 80-inch reach, 6'3", very gangly for that division. He's predominantly a striker. I think he's got some kickboxing experience as well. No means a specialist. He was brought in on the Contender Series to get smashed by Edmund Shabazian's much less talented older brother, and spoiled the plans. And essentially, after getting dropped in the first round, which was quite amusing because Phil Rowe was showboating and thinking he was Anderson Silva and whatnot, and then got dropped. Actually had a semi-decent performance, came back and outlasted Leon Shabazian and picked up a 3rd round win. That was like 18 months ago. He's been scheduled 3 times since, has pulled out in twice of those. And now he's going against Gabe Green. Gabe Green, I'd kind of wrote off before his UFC debut. I know he'd been stopped a couple of times in Bellator way back in the day. Since then, he's actually put together, I would say, like a commendable win streak. He also has a win over Leon Shabazian, and was a pretty aggressive finisher on the regional circuit and was beating some decent regional guys. And by decent, I mean they all had respectable winning records. Meanwhile, Phil Rowe has only ever beaten Leon Shabazian with a winning record. Everyone else was
Scrub City.
A can essentially, yeah. So immediately for me, that means I'm kind of steering towards Gabe Green. I think it not only tells a lot about a fighter's skill set, but it also is a strong indicator of kind of where their mentality is if they're looking to cherry pick easy opponents. Gabe Green's had those losses early. He's come back. He's fought good people. I was impressed with him in his debut. I thought, given that he's got a couple of stoppage losses before, and given the hype around, how have I forgotten his name? Can someone
Daniel Rodriguez, you fucking knob.
Mate, I know. Never. This is all my 10th Planet friends are going to stab me. For
mate, after Herbert Burns.
Gilbert. But yes, Daniel Rodriguez and him had a great fight. It was a really, really competitive 3-rounder. Gabe Green took shots really well. His defense looked much improved from his stint in Bellator. And I think he ended up landing like 120 strikes on Dan Rodriguez as well. So
it was a great fight.
No concerns there around heart, no concerns there around cardio, even though that was late notice. My only not necessarily a concern, but something to flag is that Gabe Green has fought maybe once in 2.5 years outside that Daniel Rodriguez fight is the only one. He had a pretty long layoff beforehand. I think that probably helps him. He's still in his mid-20s. I'm not too sure if his camp is particularly notable. I know he trains out in California, but I think for someone like him who's had that experience, I think that time off will be good and he'll be improving his skill set. I think it's always difficult to gauge because both of these guys are coming in with a degree of a layoff, right? But I don't really like Phil Rowe. I thought he was unnecessarily cocky in his fight. I think he was fortunate to outlast Leon Shabazian, and I think he's someone who has benefited from having a very, very good frame, right? And he's obviously able to use that on the feet and whatnot, but I don't actually think he has a particularly good set of skills. So I'm on Gabe Green for this one. I think he's fought better opposition. I think he's more durable, more gritty, and I think he TKOs Phil Rowe inside of 3 rounds.
So what round?
I think round 1, actually. Leon Shabazian dropped Phil Rowe pretty badly and had him really, really shook. And I think Gabe Green's got some decent power. So yeah, hopefully Car Boots out Neil Magny gets out of there quick.
Fuck's sake. The only thing I will say about his 2 knockout losses early was one of them was to Jalen Turner.
Yeah.
Right. And we know how good Jalen Turner is. The potential there is unbelievable. So I don't take too much on that loss. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm taking Green TKO round 2 for basically all the reasons that you've just said. I think Phil Rowe is probably a little bit overstated and rides into the UFC on the coattails of an average performance. And yeah, I think we'll see Gabe Green probably. You know, it's always good to look at these people's records and see what are the level of competition that they're fighting. Is it somebody that is proving to be good tests for them, or is it somebody that they've been served up in an Eastern European report can? And you know, it seems like one fighter is in one extreme of that and the other is in the other. So I think experience is absolutely massive, and I feel like Gabe Green can use his experience. Ian, have you got any final thoughts for us on the pick?
Not too much to add to what you guys have already said. You broke it down very well. The only thing I'll say is my prediction will be for the fight. I'm going with you guys. I think Green gets it done. I think he gets it done by knockout, and I'm going to go the same as you, Harry. I think it's going to be a knockout in round 2.
Yes, big shout. Now, this one, the reason why I picked this one is because Julian Robertson's one of my favorite fighters. But this is a tough fight for Julian Robertson. This really is a tough fight for Julian Robertson. So Julian Robertson is known for her grappling. She's really good when she gets on top, and her passing is good, and she can take the back well, and she has good ground and pound and all this stuff. Now, I mean, her Polyana Pitolo fight was really good. Her Talia Santos fight, she just seemed to make all of the wrong decisions at all of the right times and just sort of threw that fight away, frankly. But I feel like she is a fighter that has lots and lots of potential. If she can get the fight to where she likes it, right, where pushing her opponents back up against the fence, grinding them down, getting those takedowns, passing guards, and landing ground and pound, she's a really, really, really good prospect. It's obviously everything else that seems to be the problem. And you know, Miranda Maverick is somebody that can absolutely go out there and exploit those, right? Big power on the feet, long, good frame for the weight class. What is she? She's 5'3", so she's small, but a 65-inch reach advantage to Gillian Roberts, 63 at 5'5". So, you know, rangy for a shorter woman. A record that's really cool. The thing that I like about her we touched on a Miranda Maverick fight for the Liana Jojoa matchup was the Diana Bennett. So she lost a unanimous decision against Bennett in Invicta. She comes back round and then finishes Diana Bennett in the rematch. Now that to me is huge. That shows major improvements. That shows a fighter that is obviously young in the game. What is she now? 8-2, 7-2, something like that. And I feel like the sky is the limit in terms of Miranda Maverick's potential in this division, especially. The Liana Jojoa fight was a bit of a strange one. I mean, Jojoa is a little bit of a scrub. Let's not get this away. You know, let's not get too far away from this. But it felt like Maverick took a little bit of time to get comfortable in there, UFC debut, the jitters, all this sort of stuff. And she was taking shots from Joshua. And then eventually I think she realized that Joshua didn't have the power to hurt her, sat down on the punches, and then, the doctor stoppage in round 1. But the amount of blood that was coming out of Joshua, it wasn't going to last much longer, even if she did make it to the second round. So I feel like this is a tough matchup for Robertson, because in order to put Maverick on the back foot, she's going to need to offer something on the feet, and that's not Robertson's strong suit. Maverick, however, will be able to push Robertson back, and Robertson on her back didn't look great in her last outing. So, look, I mean, as Ian alluded to earlier, anything can happen in MMA, but I feel like this is a really tough fight for Gillian Robertson. Ian, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree 100%, Harry. It's going to be a very tough fight for Robertson. When it comes to the grappling, I think Maverick is just going to be the stronger of the two, and that's going to play to her advantage. Where if you're going in with a game plan against Maverick, you're going to have to try and take it to her on the feet, and I don't know if Gillian Robertson has that in her. So for that reason, I probably would be leaning towards Miranda Maverick to win this fight.
Jack?
Yeah, so I think one thing that was really encouraging to me about Maverick's last performance, and again, it was against Joshua, so it's not the highest level of opposition, but I think we've seen since Gillian Robertson entered the UFC, she knows the good thing about Gillian is she knows what she wants to do, right? She's a specialist grappler. She has excellent wrestling as well. Mm-hmm. And that's where she wants to take the fight. And we've seen her progress through her grappling in her UFC career and make improvements. We haven't really seen her tidy up her boxing much at all. Whereas with Maverick has a similar base to Gillian. She is predominantly a grappler as well, but she was presented with a match with Joshua, where Joshua is only ever going to win by Hail Mary armbar from close guard. And Maverick was really my absolute favourite. And she smartly kept it on the feet and absolutely battered her, opening up with that peach of an elbow as well. So I think Maverick's got more ways to win. And I think Gillian's going to have a harder time than she thinks getting this down. My sneaky pick for this one is I actually think Maverick's going to get her out of there inside 3. I think she's going to end up stopping her on the feet.
I agree. Ian, have you got a pick for us?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Maverick round 3 TKO.
Put me down for the same, Harry.
Okay, so I actually am going to take a round 2 TKO. The reason why I think that is because I just feel like for all of Gillian Robertson's dominance when she gets on top, her bottom game is just not anywhere near as good, When in her last performance, she was tying up close guard, she was trying to move for this, move for that. At no point did she attempt to get back to her feet, work her own, maybe get a reversal or anything. It was just close guard. I'm going to attempt to not get too much damage inflicted, which didn't happen, right? She got pieced up quite badly from ground and pound by Talia Santos. And if there's one person you don't want landing ground and pound on you, it's probably Miranda Maverick, right? And I feel like if Gillian Robertson decides to stay on the ground and attempt to grapple, she's going to take a lot of damage. Those elbows are mean, they're nasty, and they come sharp. And, I don't know how much damage you can take if your only offense is offensive grappling and you have a grappler that's stronger and is more superior in the striking, it's going to be tough for you. So yeah, I'll take a TKO in round 2. And yeah, those are the fights. So I will take, as always, I'll take fight of the night picks. So Ian, if you give me your fight of the night pick, please.
Ooh, fight of the night. I can't look past Ricky Simone and Brian Kelleher.
I think that's a good shout.
Yeah, either that or the main event. I think, the main event does have potential to be the fight of the night. And, if they put on a real close, good fight, Burns and Usman, they will take it. But I'm going to go with Ricky Simone versus Brian Kelleher for fight of the night.
Okay, I'm taking Pedro Munhoz versus Jimmie Rivera for fight of the night. I feel like Kelleher Simone, I feel like it's going to be either one or the other is going to take this fight. I don't feel like it's going to be massively close. I feel like either Kelleher
it's not too often. it's not too often that they would give the fight of the night to a fight on the lower end of the card as well. So
very true.
So that's why I would also say, if Usman and Burns put on a good close fight and it's an over and back, that you could very well see those two guys getting fight of the night as well. Yeah. But on paper, before the card even happens, that's why I would lean towards Kelleher and Simone. Sorry for interrupting again.
No problems. And Jack, you're taking Munhoz versus Rivera, right?
Yeah, I think they got robbed. Their first fight was absolutely the best fight that night, and I think they got robbed because the UFC decided to hand out four performance bonuses for knockout of the night instead. And I think Jimmie Rivera, both of these guys are kind of consistent entertainers in an exceptionally entertaining division. I was just looking here. Jimmie Rivera's only had one fight of the night in his UFC tenure, which I find completely shocking, thinking back to the great fights with Almeida, Petian, etc., and obviously the first one with Pedro. So I'm hoping they get their cash. They deserve it, and I'm sure it'll be great.
All right. Well, any final thoughts on the card, gents? Any final thoughts on any news this week before we wrap up?
I think overall, in the main event, just going back to it for a brief moment, I do feel that overall Usman is a very underrated fighter.
I agree.
Part of that reason would be because he probably doesn't get enough finishes. A lot of his fights go to unanimous decision. And I really think that this is a real good moment and a real good fight for him to go out there and make a real statement and get a finish here against Gilbert Burns. Now, that's going to be easier said than done. He's going to have to be very respectful of Burns on the feet with the power that Burns has. Both of them are quite equal in the grappling aspect, in my opinion. I know Burns is a more astute Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, all right, but I think takedown defense for Usman is not going to be a problem. And I think that he'll just have a little bit too much for Burns on the feet, and he's going to slowly wear him out. And I think it'll either be a late stoppage or unanimous decision win. I would like to see Kamaru Usman go for that stoppage. I think he needs it. He needs it for his legacy. He needs to get a couple of finishes under his belt. He's been fighting, looking very good throughout his past couple of fights, ever improving, but he needs to make that jump and start putting guys away. That's how you really create your legacy. If he wants to go on and match the likes of GSP and stuff in the welterweight division, he's going to have to go and start putting a few guys away. This is a fight, even though they're familiar with one another and they've trained together before, I'd like to see Usman come out there and try and make that statement.
Well, shit, on the back of that promo, I mean, let's fucking call time there. But what I will say is, Ian, on the back of that promo, please tell people where they can find your work and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can find all my work over at severemma.com. You can find me on Twitter at ioneilmma and the same on Instagram as well. All my stuff goes up on Severe MMA. I go on with Sean Severe MMA podcast on the Patreon as well, quite often as well. So sign up there for some excellent MMA content.
Absolutely. And I think just before I hand over to Jack, I just want to give a short shout out to Severe MMA, one of the OGs of European MMA media. Sean over at the Severe MMA podcast has put out over 1,000 episodes over the last 6 years, right? I think it was 6 years today. I saw on Twitter that 6 years today was the first episode. And in that time, 1,000 episodes is absolutely ludicrous work rate. So big shout out to Severe MMA, the Severe MMA podcast, and to Sean Sheehan. And obviously, as always, Jack, please do tell us where we can find you if people want to.
Yeah, I'm not as active on Twitter these days, but maybe if I get a few more followers, I'll reconsider. So Jack_Sear on Twitter, and it's Jackaraba on Instagram, where I'm a little bit more active. Probably going to get your money's worth there.
Well, actually, last thing, Jack, have you got a betting pick for us?
Oh, that's a good point, actually. I didn't have a look because some of the odds are still to come out. Let me throw one together really quickly, which obviously means that you should bet it with absolute full confidence. Do you know what? It's not a ludicrous odds, but I think the odds are slightly unbalanced. Phil Rose trash. Gabe Green, you can get him. It's pretty much evens at the moment. Remortgage your house, get money from your nan, whatever you got to do, slap it on Gabe Green, it's coming home.
Perfect. All right. Well, look, gents, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have not missed Sean one bit. I think the one thing that Sean does do is he rolls on and says nothing for about 6 minutes. Whereas Ian, you've given us 6 minutes of absolute banging content every single fucking pick. So I mean, hopefully Sean is snowed in with work forever and we can just have you on every single week.
Well, I gladly come on anytime you guys want. I had great fun, and it's always good to come on here and talk some fights with you guys.
Beautiful. It's been a pleasure as always, Jack. Thank you very much for your time, and I will speak to you soon, gents.